Hi everyone. Some of you have been having problems with print and cut, so I just thought I'd do a quick lesson just to see if I can help you over these problems. So first of all, I'm actually going to open my library. So I'm going to File, My Library, My Own Designs, and you'll see down here that I actually have a feather. Now that is on my website in www.ayeone.com. That's AYEONE.com, and you can download that actual piece of silhouette artwork. So I'm going to double click on it, and it's appeared on my 12 by 12 inch work area, and you can see that by this area here. Now when I print this, I'm actually going to use A4 cardboard. So I'm going to now go over to this side and select A4. I've still got the 12 by 12 inch matte view, but it's on an A4 piece of paper. I'm going to also reduce the size of this feather because at the moment it's a bit large. So I go up to the top and you'll see this square just here. If I click on that, it will allow me to change the size either by a percentage or specific dimensions. So I'm going to say lock aspect ratio, and I'm going to make the height 5 inches, which brings down the width to 2.37, and I'll click apply. That's just to reduce the size of the feather, otherwise it was quite large. Now you can see that that actually has got a red line around it. To check whether or not there's already a cut line around it, I'm going to go up here to the scissors icon. Now you can see there is already a cut line. Now if you try and add your own cut line, you'll get a double cut. So I'm going to turn off and say no cut. So there is no cut line now around that at all. To bring that back, I'm just going to hit my paint tin at the top. Now you can also see down the bottom here, I've got some little squares. These are the group and ungroup icons. If I press ungroup and move that to one side, you'll see that this part in the middle was a separate piece of artwork. If I now select all those together, go up to the top to the Align tool, which is this one up here, and click center, it brings it back to where I want it to be. And I'm just going to click off it again. So I'm just going to select it all, and I'm going to group it back together again by hitting the group button down the bottom. Now I need to decide whether I'm going to have an offset in my print and cut, or whether I want it right up to the edge of the feathers. To show you the difference, I'm going to go up to the replicate button up the top here, which looks like a flower. So I'm going to click on that, and I get all sorts of options. I've got duplicate options, mirror options, rotate option, and also by adding other copies. Or you can also fill the page. I mainly use these two squares. So I'm just going to duplicate that to the right, which gives me another copy. By using my up, down, right, left buttons on my keyboard, I can actually move that across out of the way. So whilst I've got this one selected, I'm going to go up the top to the button that says Open the Offset window. Now I'm going to click Offset, and you'll see that by default it's come up 0.25. That's very wide. My favorite is to reduce that down to 0.10 and click apply. Now you can see that I've actually got that offset around my feather. If I select these, hit onto the cut button, you can see that everything's no cut. If I select cut, you can now see that everything's got a cut line around it. That's not what I want. I'm going to go back to no cut. So I bring them back into the window. Now you've got plus, minus, and this little doodad here. By clicking on that and drawing a square around an area, I can zoom right in. So if I select this line and then go to the cut tool and hit cut and zoom back out again by hitting the minus, it shows me that I'm only cutting around the feather, not the feather itself. So do you understand what I did? All this in the inside is no cut. The line around the feather with a margin is this line here. Okay, so I'm going to bring that back into view again to make it easier for you. Now I'm going to select this feather. I'm going to go to the offset button again up the top. This time I'm going to select 0 and apply. Now that has put that offset line right up close to the edge, but it's not easy to see with the just looking at the screen. So again, we're going to go in again. Now, if you try and click on that, you may or may not get that outline, that cut line. So I'm just going to click. Now, by using my right, left arrow buttons again, I can make sure that that's what I've got. So if I nudge that, see what's happening? I'm nudging to the right, but I didn't get the cut line. I actually got that inside part. So while it's nudged over, I can actually grab that line. I've got to click off and then grab that line. Now let's see if I nudge that. Oh, now the outline, cut line is moving. This is really important if you're doing print and cut, because you cannot always see where that cut line's going to be. So I'm going to go back out again. So once I've determined that that was the line I wanted and it is going to cut correctly, there's no double lines, I can grab that, go up to the top to the align window and just say center. Now you couldn't see that because we're a fair way out, but if we zoom back in again, that centered that back where it should be, really close to the edge of the feathers. So I'm going to zoom back out again. It's very easy when you're playing around with these to get more than one cut line. Ask me how I know. If I want to reduce the size of that feather, then I will actually remove that feather to the side, delete with my delete key that cut line, grab the feather, go to my resize and resize it down. So if I want to make that down to say 3 and apply, I've brought that down. Now I'm going to add the cut line. But before I do that, I need to do my offset again. So I'm going to offset, 0, apply. That should be fine. Now if I hit the cut line, again, everything's still set at no cut, which is not, again, what we want. So I need to select that cut line again. So I'm going to nudge this way again, just to make it easier to grab the cut line, and then click cut. I missed it. See, it's cut around the feather. It didn't actually cut on that line, even though I thought I was on that line. I'm just going to undo it. I'm going to go in again and try and grab the outside line and say cut. Now I've got it. Zoom back out again, off it, grab it, align center, and that brings it back into alignment. If you try and actually grab all that, resize it down, you can make a mistake. It's much quicker and easier just to remove that cut line, reduce whatever you want to reduce down, and then you'll be fine when you just add your cut line. So I'm just going to zoom back out again. So now if I grab all these and go cut, you can see that I'm only cutting there and I'm only cutting here. I'm not cutting this bit in the middle either, because that's classed as a no cut because we want to print it. Alright, so we're going to go back out again. Now I want to go up to the top and add registration marks. So I've clicked on the registration mark icon, show registration marks. Now I need to make sure that these feathers that I'm going to cut are within this red line here, this margin. You'll see a red line inside. So I'm going to grab that one and move it up here. Now I tend to keep mine within ½ an inch of those borders. So you can see my top of my feather. I can nudge it up. Gonna grab this one, and again I can move it to where I want it. If I didn't want to waste paper, then I could actually probably turn it on its side. So hit the rotate, and I'm going to go clockwise 90 degrees, and I can nudge it over again with my arrow keys, provided it doesn't go over that margin of that red line. I can probably save some paper. So I'm just cardboard, I'm just going to leave it there. Now having done all that, it looks exactly where I want it. I've got a registration mark there, I've got one there, and I've got one at the bottom. If I was doing this myself, I would select all those. I would go up to the replicate, and I can duplicate below. If I want to have a variation in that feather, I can mirror below, which flips it. Use my keys to move it down. They're still all within that red area, but I'm not going to be wasting as much cardstock. You can pile them in as close as you like, but just remember, the more you've got on there, the more you've got to risk cutting. Okay, so having done all that, now I need to go to my print icon, which is up the top here, the printer, and select the printer. Now this printer I've got here is just my laser black and white. This one is my Epson photo printer, color printer. Now I'm going to do preferences, and I do this every time I do a print and cut, just to make sure everything is set right. So I'll go preferences. Now you've got fast, standard, high quality, 2-up, fast grayscale, and grayscale. This is on my printer. You may have different ones. I will always pick high quality. Then I need to go up here and make sure that the paper I'm using is the same size as what I've used on my work area, which is A4. I tend to rotate between A4, and some of mine are letter, or legal as they call it, letter, which is 8.5 by 11 inches. But for this project we're doing A4. So now I would say OK. Make sure you hit apply to apply those changes. So I would hit apply and then print. Before you do that, make sure your cardstock is in the printer. Again, why do I double check? Because I often forget. Okay, so I'm going to close that and pretend that we've printed. So now if I go up here, I get the Cameo icon up the top, print image. We've already printed, or we pretended we're printed. And I prefer to do that than just print from here. So I'm going to say click here to skip printing. It's now going to say I've got my roller still set for my 13 inches, my 12 by 12 mat. Placed my piece of cardstock that I've printed on onto my mat, and I place it on the top left hand corner. Set my silhouette display to load cutting mat, not load media. Then you load your cutting mat into the Cameo and click continue. Then I'm going to select detect automatically. Now the machine will detect your registration marks. Two things to be aware of. If you have used high quality, those registration marks are very dark black and your machine won't have a problem picking them up. Something else to be aware of, when you feed that paper into the printer, make sure, like I have my Cameo on a smaller size table, so really there's no support at the back when that paper comes out at the back. So I make sure I hold my hand lightly underneath that paper so it won't move. Don't grip it or whatever, or you will move it. Just lightly support it when it does the front registration mark. It's not quite as vital at the front, providing your machine is not balanced on the edge of a small table. If it is, again, you need to just support it lightly. After it has done the registration marks, so I'm just going to say skip registration marks because I haven't actually got any paper in. Current settings. Now my settings are on cardstock, speed 3, thickness 33. I'm going to click on change settings to verify that it's set at double cut. I like a double cut because it seems to be a lot cleaner cut than if you leave it on a single cut. If you are doing a print and cut on light paper, you don't need to do that double cut. I'm going to make sure it's on blade. If you're using your normal Cameo blade holder, change it to 4. If you are using the CB09 generic holders, the metal ones, you need to make sure that your blade is in the correct place by just using the little screw at the top. I find that if my blade has been set for cardboard or vinyl, I really don't have to touch it. The only time I have to make it a little bit further out is if I'm doing thick cardboard that's embossed, and it will catch if I don't do that. But if I'm doing print and cut, then I wouldn't be using the embossing cardstock anyway. I'd just be using a plain cardstock. If you latch onto a white cardstock or a black cardstock that you like and works really well for your print and cuts, stick to that. I get mine from Craft Online, and I use the same white cardboard cardstock all the time so that I know I'll get a consistent cut. I don't test cut. I just bite the bullet and hit cut. If you followed all these steps, you shouldn't have a problem with your print and cuts. You should get a perfect cut every time. Most of the problems are with this cut line. I know when I first started to do them, I'd accidentally done other cut lines, thinking that I couldn't see them on the screen, so therefore they weren't there. Not true. Ask me how I know that one as well. Okay, so just try this, and I hope it's helped you a little bit to solve these issues. Thanks for watching.